The discovery. The attic smelled of dust, old wood, and forgotten time. Sunlight slanted in through a small window, revealing swirls of floating particles every time Aarav brushed against a stack of boxes or shook out an old bedsheet. He wasn't thrilled about spending his Saturday cleaning the upper floor of his grandmother's house, but he'd agreed when she asked with that tired smile she wore lately. "Just clear out the boxes near the east wall," she had said. "There might be old things we no longer need." As Aarav worked his way through yellowing newspapers and rusted tins, something unusual caught his eye beneath a pile of cloth-bound books. One of the floorboards was slightly raised. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but it tugged at his curiosity. He knelt, pushed the books aside, and pried at the board with his fingers. With a reluctant creak, it came loose, revealing a hollow space beneath. Inside, nestled in dust and cobwebs, was a worn leather-bound diary. The cover was cracked, and its corners had curled with age. Faded across the front were the initials MK. He brushed it off and flipped it open. The first page was dated June 14th, 1993. "Dear Diary, I don't know if anyone will ever read this, but I need to write it somewhere. Everything feels too heavy to carry alone." Aarav glanced toward the attic door. His grandmother had gone downstairs to prepare lunch. He settled into a dusty old armchair in the corner and began to read. Meera, that was her name. A 15-year-old girl, bright and full of dreams, until her entries started to shift. The first few pages describe her school, her friends, and how she loved sketching flowers in her notebook. But then the tone darkened. "Something strange is happening at school. I don't know who to tell. There's a teacher who keeps looking at me the wrong way. Once, he touched my shoulder and smiled like it meant something." Aarav's fingers hesitated on the page. He read on. "I told Rhea, but she just laughed and said I was overthinking. I don't think she believed me. No one ever believes me." The pages continued with growing fear and isolation. Meera tried to talk to a teacher and then to her parents. The responses were always the same: doubt, dismissal, or silence. Today, they called me dramatic. My mother looked ashamed. I think she's more worried about what people will say than what's happening to me. Am I really just imagining this? The entries became erratic, some scribbled in a hurried hand. One page had ink blots where tears must have fallen. "I feel like I'm screaming in a room where no one can hear me. If someone ever finds this, please don't think I'm lying. I just wanted someone to care." Aarav felt a knot in his chest as he turned the pages. This wasn't fiction. This was real. This girl had once lived, breathed, cried in this very house. He wondered if his grandmother had known her. Maybe a relative? A friend? He looked at the attic around him differently now. The silence seemed heavier, as if it carried the weight of forgotten voices. At the bottom of one of the last pages he read, in slanted, fading handwriting, were the words, "If anyone ever reads this, please don't judge me. I only wanted someone to listen." "Lunch is ready," his grandmother called from below. Aarav closed the diary gently and held it in both hands. For a moment, he didn't move. His heart was still wrapped in the sadness of Meera's words. There was a story here, unfinished and aching. He didn't know who Meera was yet, or what exactly had happened to her, but he knew one thing for certain. Someone had needed to be heard. And now, 30 years later, maybe someone finally was. Shadows of the past. That night, Aarav couldn't sleep. The diary sat on his desk, its worn cover closed but still pressing against his thoughts. He had reread the last few pages several times, as if hoping the ink would shift and offer more answers. Who was Meera? What had happened to her after that final entry? And why had her voice been buried under floorboards for decades? At breakfast the next morning, Aarav stirred his cereal without appetite. "Grandma," he began cautiously. "Did someone named Meera ever live here? Someone with the initials MK?" His grandmother paused, spoon halfway to her mouth. Her gaze drifted to the window, eyes distant. "Why do you ask?" I found a diary in the attic. It's old, from the 90s. She slowly put the spoon down. "Meera was your grandfather's niece. She stayed with us one summer. Sweet girl, quiet, always had her nose in a book. What happened to her?" There was a long silence. "She left," his grandmother said finally. "Ran away. or so we believed. It was all very sudden. No note, no goodbye. Just gone. The police couldn't find her. Her parents were devastated. Aarav didn't mention what was in the diary. Not yet. But now he was certain. Meera hadn't just disappeared. She'd been silenced, swallowed by a world that hadn't wanted to hear what she had to say. At school, Aarav's mind was elsewhere. He watched people more closely now. How they talked, how they listened, how they didn't. That's when he noticed Kavya. She was new, had joined school 2 months ago, but already people kept their distance. She walked alone in hallways, sat by herself in the cafeteria, and barely spoke in class. Whispers followed her everywhere. She's weird. She made up some drama at the school trip. I heard she cried because a teacher told her to stay back after class. Aarav didn't know Kavya personally, but he couldn't unsee the eerie parallels between her and Meera. The same loneliness, the same shrinking presence, the same haunted silence. That afternoon, as he walked past the music room, he saw her sitting on the bench outside, hugging her knees. Her face was turned away, but he could tell she was crying. 2 boys passed by and snickered. Must be drama hour again, one muttered. Aarav stopped. For a moment, he hesitated, uncertain, nervous. But then Meera's words echoed in his mind. If someone ever finds this, please don't think I'm lying. He walked up quietly and sat down on the other end of the bench, saying nothing. Kavya wiped her face quickly, stiffening at his presence. I'm not here to judge, he said softly. I just thought maybe you didn't want to be alone. She said nothing, but didn't get up and leave either. That felt like a small victory. Later that evening, Aarav took the diary to his room again. He opened to a middle page and continued reading. I feel like I disappear more every day. People say they care, but they look away when it matters. Meera had once written about a specific teacher, Mr. S., who had been the first to make her feel unsafe. She had gone to the principal, and nothing had happened. A week later, she was suspended for behavioral issues. The system had failed her. Aarav felt a burning sense of injustice. And now, it felt like history might be repeating itself with Kavya. Whatever happened to her, real or not, nobody was even willing to ask. That night, he searched online for news archives and school records. He didn't find much, but a local blog mentioned a girl named Meera who vanished in 1993. No foul play suspected. No follow-up. Just a footnote in time. His hands trembled slightly as he closed the laptop. 2 girls, decades apart, but the same silence. He picked up the diary, turned to a blank page at the end, and wrote, Meera, I believe you. And I think someone else needs me to believe her, too. Voices in the silence. The next morning, Aarav stood in front of the school counselor's office, the old diary pages trembling in his hand. He had carefully photocopied 3 entries from Meera's diary, the ones that described her fear, the silence of adults, and how she was punished after speaking out. He placed the pages inside a plain envelope and wrote a single sentence on the outside. History is repeating itself. Please listen this time. He slipped the envelope into the counselor's mailbox and walked away before he could change his mind. Kavya was absent from school that day. Aarav felt a strange anxiety sitting in class, as though the room had lost its balance. The teacher's voice droned in the background, but his focus was on the empty desk by the window. At lunch, his friend Rahul nudged him. You hear about Kavya? Aarav froze. What about her? They say her parents came to school yesterday. Something about a complaint. She's been crying wolf, apparently. She's not crying wolf, Aarav said sharply. Rahul blinked. Whoa, okay. Didn't know you cared. I just think people should stop jumping to conclusions. Rahul shrugged. Suit yourself. Just saying what everyone's thinking. And that was the problem, wasn't it? Everyone thought, but no one listened. The following day, Kavya returned to school. She walked through the halls with her head down, shoulders hunched as if bracing for a storm. Aarav caught up to her near the lockers. Hey, he said gently. She turned slightly, wary. What now? You're here to call me crazy too. No, he said. Actually, I'm here to tell you that I believe you. Kavya stared at him for a moment, stunned. I found something, he continued. A diary from a girl who went through something like this. Her name was Meera. Nobody believed her either. She disappeared. Why are you telling me this? Because no one believed her in time. I don't want that to happen again. Kavya's eyes filled, and she blinked quickly, turning away. Mr. Bhargav, he made me stay after class. Told me my grades were slipping, even though they weren't. Then he put his hand on my shoulder. Too long. Too close. He leaned in and said I should smile more. Aarav felt his jaw tighten. When I told the coordinator, Kavya whispered. She asked if I was exaggerating. Told me to be careful with accusations. But you weren't lying, Aarav said. And now someone knows. The counselor has the diary pages. Maybe it'll make a difference. She looked at him then, her expression torn between fear and fragile hope. By Friday, the atmosphere at school shifted. Whispers turned into tension. Students spoke in hushed tones. Teachers exchanged tight-lipped glances. An announcement came over the speaker. All students are reminded that any concerns or complaints will be taken seriously. Please reach out to the counseling office if you need support. It wasn't much, but it was something. Then, that afternoon, the counselor called Aarav in. I received the pages, she said, holding the envelope. Do you know where they came from? Aarav hesitated, then nodded. They were from my house. I found an old diary in the attic. The girl, Meera Kothari, she stayed with my family long ago. The counselor's eyes softened. She described something painful, and now a student here may be facing something similar. Aarav swallowed. Yes, that's why I brought it to you. You did the right thing, Aarav. He felt a knot loosen in his chest. That weekend, his grandmother noticed the change in him. You've been quiet, she said as they folded laundry. Aarav looked up. Did Meera ever contact anyone? After she left, his grandmother paused. No, at least not officially. But I heard years later that she was alive, living under a different name. Someone said she worked at a shelter for women. I didn't follow up. Maybe I was afraid to. Do you remember the name she used? I think. Maya. By Monday, things were in motion. Mr. Bhargav had been placed on temporary leave, and the school had launched an internal investigation. Kavya met with the counselor privately. She looked lighter afterward, like she had finally set something down. Aarav, heart racing, asked his grandmother if they could try to find Maya. She looked at him for a long time. If you think she'd want me found, we'll try. That evening, Aarav wrote one more note in Meera's diary. Someone is listening now. You weren't alone, and neither is she. Healing echoes. It took less than a week to find her. Her name now was Maya Kulkarni, living 2 towns over. She ran a modest women's counseling center tucked between a bookstore and a clinic. The website had a single photo, Maya in her late 40s, kind eyes behind thin glasses. She looked nothing like the girl in the diary. But somehow, Aarav knew it was her. His grandmother made the call. I found something that once belonged to you, she said over the phone, and someone who wants to return it. The next Saturday, Aarav and his grandmother stood outside the center. A wooden sign above the entrance read, "The listening room, a place to be heard." Inside, Maya greeted them with warmth and visible curiosity. She led them to a quiet room with soft chairs and pastel curtains. Aarav handed her the diary. Her fingers trembled as she touched the leather cover. For a moment, she just stared at it, her eyes filling. I thought I'd never see this again, she whispered. I hid it because I was afraid, and then I ran. We found it under the attic floorboards, Aarav said quietly. I read it. I hope that's okay. She nodded, brushing away a tear. It's more than okay. It means someone finally heard me. A long silence followed. Then, slowly, Maya began talk. She told them how she had left that night with only a backpack and the hurt she couldn't name out loud. How she had lived in hostels, taken odd jobs, and eventually found healing through helping others. She had changed her name to Maya and tried to move on. But the pain of not being believed had never quite left. When I was 15, she said, I needed one person to stand beside me. Just one. And I didn't have that. But this time, this girl you told me about, she did. Because of you. Aarav felt his throat tighten. He hadn't done anything heroic. He just listened, chosen to act. Sometimes that was enough. Back at school, everything was different. Mr. Bhargav had resigned. The administration introduced a new reporting system. Anonymous, accessible, mandatory follow-ups for every complaint. Counselors received additional training. Assemblies were held, not about fear, but about courage. Kavya was no longer alone. She smiled more, spoke louder, and joined the school's literary club. Her first piece was titled "Silence is Not Consent." One afternoon, she handed Aarav a note. "Thank you for listening when it mattered." 2 weeks later, the principal made an announcement. The library would house a new permanent display, the listening shelf. Students could submit anonymous journal entries about their experiences, fear, hope, confusion, anything. It would be a safe space for voices often buried. At the center of the shelf sat Meera's diary, now preserved in a protective glass case. A placard beside it read, "This diary belonged to Meera Kothari. She spoke when no one would listen. Let this be a reminder that every voice matters." On the day the display was unveiled, Maya visited the school. She didn't speak at the microphone. She didn't need to. Her presence was enough. Kavya met her privately, and though no one knew what they said, both walked out with tearful eyes and small smiles. Later that day, as the sun dipped behind the school building, Aarav sat on the library steps with the original diary in his lap. He opened to the final page, where Meera had once written, "If anyone ever reads this, please don't judge me." He added his own words underneath, in neat, firm handwriting. "We didn't. We believed you. And because of that, someone else could speak too." He closed the diary and placed it gently back in its case. That night, as he lay in bed, Aarav thought about voices, how easily they were lost, and how powerful they could be when finally heard. Meera had once been a whisper under floorboards. Now, she was a voice in every hallway, a story etched into the heart of the school, a legacy of listening. And in the silence that followed, a new echo began, not of pain, but of healing.